Okay. So we'll call this meeting to order. This is the Wellington Conservation Commission, and today is June
15th.
15th. Thank you. I'm on Vermont time.
I don't at least know what day it is. I may not know where I am.
I should just look at the agenda. Today's June 15th, and this is the Conservation Commission meeting. And we're going to call this meeting to order at 7:04. And we have present with us Peter Anderson, Carol Jordan, Bob Shabbat, and Patty Phillips. Kathy Demers, chair. First order of business tonight is approval of the minutes for May 18th. Does anybody need any more time to look those over?
I move we approve the minutes of the meeting of May 18th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Anybody abstain?
No.
Yeah, I'll abstain. I wasn't there.
Okay.
Did someone say one time that you can still vote on minutes even if you weren't there at the meeting?
Because they were actually, because Marilyn. Yeah,
I believe that I believe you can
You
as long
can.
as you've read them.
as long as you've read them, yeah, I think so.
Oh, I
Because-
read them, so, yeah, okay, I'll say yes.
Yeah, I think,
Okay.
All right, I will too then, yes.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Okay, doesn't look like we have anybody present to speak tonight.
Good.
Carol, I don't want to put you on the spot. We can wait a minute if you need some time, but if you want to give us a treasurer's report at some point.
I can, I think I can give you a treasurer's report. The expenditures to date are $1,204.03. And we have some other things encumbered, well, including one that's going to come up later, Kathy, with the bill you submitted for the hardware.
Mhm.
Yeah, so with encumbrances, we're talking about $1,387.87, and that includes encumbering the balance that's left for the Girl Scouts pollinator garden, because they want to do some signage and we don't as yet have any cost on that. And I haven't heard anything more from Connie, so I need to check with her because we'd like to get that money spent in this fiscal year if possible. But she had a lot of trouble finding any standard, pre-existing pollinator garden signage that she thought would work. So that's held things up, I bet.
Okay. Thanks, Carol. So
So
what
we're down to
do we have
turn
left?
14.
Oh, go ahead.
We have about roughly 1,400 potential expenditures.
Okay, so about 100 unencumbered at this point.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, Talmadge Estate property, as you guys all know, we have some really exciting news. We did get a letter from Deep stating that we have been granted an award. We have a few things that we have to do prior to actually receiving money, but it looks like we could potentially get up to $81,250, which is exciting. We have to remove those old car parts and the tires from the property is one of the conditions of receiving the money. That something we anticipated doing anyway, and it shouldn't be really a big deal. And then we have some other things that have to be sent to Deep, including things like the survey, an updated title search. We have to have a conservation easement drawn up and signed by both parties. So there's some work to do, but it's looking pretty good. And we should be closing on the Talmadge Estate sometime. I'm anticipating it by the end of this month. So,
Nice.
so we can, probably think about doing some of that work. Maybe this summer we can look to maybe get the Public Works Department involved in terms of hauling some of that stuff away. There's the car parts that are there. It's just the body of an old truck. Doesn't have any engine or any kind of gas tank or anything that was toxic in any way. It's just old metal. So
Is that something that could be cut up with a Sawzall?
I would think so, Bob. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's not really that far from the road, so it wouldn't be too hard. And there's probably half a dozen tires at the most. Some of them were used just to frame some planting areas around the garden, and a few of them are actually around the pins on the property line.
Hmm.
So. Other property management issues, Fenton Ruby Park. Just wanted to mention that our trail stewards, Josh Langevin and Kane, trying to remember Kane's last name. It will come to me. They did some work both on their trails. They're assigned to the Weigold and to the Ruby Trail. And they did some work last month. We had talked about doing something to secure the fishing platform a little bit more. Peter, maybe, I know you and Chris were brainstorming on this to make sure it doesn't float away again if we get high water. Did you have some thoughts on that? We might need some hardware we might need to purchase before the end of the month. We could use some of those funds.
Did anybody see the pictures on the news tonight of the flooding at Yellowstone?
Yes.
Yeah.
Talk about things washing away. It's incredible, just incredible.
So Pete, is there anything that you think that we would need to purchase to?
Well, Chris mentioned using some large screw eyes in the dock, but I looked in Mansfield Supply today. They have some that might work, but it may be something a little bit bigger. I don't know what Willard's has. Whether they have something heavier duty, but I think I'm down to Willie next week one day and I can check that out. And then if not, then I don't know, we range a little further afar for some of those, and then some iron pipe, and maybe the iron pipe that I passed off to Chris the other day, we cut that in half. That might be good for 2 pipes. We drive into the ground through the eye bolts in the front of the dock. Might secure it.
Okay.
And
For
Kathy,
at least a 500-year flood, maybe the 1,000-year flood, it wouldn't work, but.
you have the bill that you submitted to me for some hardware that would be associated with that project as well.
Right. So I can speak to that. So back in April, when we were working on the platform, getting it in place with Public Works, Chris and I purchased some tiles to put down under the posts and some post materials and hardware for that. I didn't submit the bill at that time because I wasn't sure how much we'd end up needing for this year. But if we have money left over, it's something we purchased, and I had sent the receipt on to Carol. So it was for $39.76.
And I did include that in the encumbered monies.
Okay, great. Thank you. So if somebody wants to make a motion to reimburse me for that, that would be helpful.
So move.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Any objections? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right.
Oh, let me throw this out to, on the dock. I've got a couple of benches I made, heavy duty benches I made to go with a picnic table that we've had forever. Table's falling apart, the benches are still solid. I thought maybe they could be affixed to the fishing platform, perpendicular to the shore against each of the sides, and they could be screwed right down to the dock and give someone a place to sit if they wanted to go out there and sit and either view or fish or have a conversation with someone else on the bench on the other side of it. I think I bounced this off Kathy and Chris, and I don't know if anyone else has an opinion on that there. Just sturdy, heavy duty 2x stock benches that, if screwed or bolted down to the platform should be fairly sturdy. And any reason not to do that anyone can see?
They're nice benches. I can attest to that.
As long as it doesn't tip the platform over, sure.
Yeah, well, it depends on how many people sit on it.
That's unpredictable, right?
Huh.
So I'll look into buying some, maybe some 5 or 6 inch timber screws down through the legs at an angle. I think maybe would suffice, and it would be easier than, could you also use angle irons on each foot too, but that would take more work to place those than just drilling some holes at an angle and running some big screws through it. So I don't know what those will cost, but not, I don't know, maybe they're more expensive now. Maybe they're probably a little under $1 a piece or something. Need,
Yeah, if you can find them now, everything's in short supply.
oh, really? Oh.
Yeah.
Well, we need 8 of them, I guess, 4 for each bench would,
And Kathy, you talked about potentially needing more hardware to do the project for securing the platform as well.
Right.
So,
Peter, do you think that $100, if we appropriated up to $100 to be spent on those items, would that cover the hardware, you think?
I would think so easily, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
is that including, that's not including what was already billed for? It would be 100 in addition to the bill that we just approved.
correct.
Yeah,
Right.
so basically it would be the balance of what's in our budget. I have no idea whether this Girl Scout project is going to come in with an invoice for signage before the end of the month anyway, so that we should have some room in there, but yeah.
Okay,
I can't think of anything else we want to spend in the next 15 days. So but we do need to spend it by the end of the month. So.
Okay, so I'd like to move that we appropriate up to $100 to purchase materials to secure benches and the fishing platform at Fenton River Park.
I'll second.
Do I hear any objections? Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I'm writing notes as I go since I'm taking minutes, so.
To secure the fishing platform and benches to be attached there too, right?
Right.
yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, report on the nature hike. We had a nice, beautiful day, huh, Patty? It was gorgeous
Yeah.
out there. And
Oh
Pete,
my God.
and
Yes.
so Pete and Patty were out there with us, and we had 10 other residents plus Chris Kelly from the rec department came out with us, and Barbara did a marvelous job as usual. Explaining about natural history items in the park, and also giving us a taste of some birch and black birch and sassafras tea, as well as some dip made with some greens that she had, some native greens. So it was a really nice day. So
And she had a little captive 10-year-old following her at her heels. It was great.
yeah. And it's funny because his father came up to me before the walk and he said, I don't think we're going to really be able to capture his attention. He might get really antsy, and I'd have to have my wife take him back down the trail, whatever. He was so engrossed with what Barbara was telling him, and she was engaging him so well. I mean, she's a master with kids. So, and I think she really enjoyed the day too. She told me that it'd been a while since she'd really been able to get out because of caring for her husband and such, to provide, a field walk like that. She really was thrilled, and she'd love to do it again. So. Okay, on to the Milton Preserve and the Talmadge track. I don't have anything to report. Has anybody been out on those trails? Any questions, concerns? The parking lot signage, I know that we may want to wait on that until we finally close on the Talmadge property and we identify what we're going to do for signage there and maybe do it all at once. So maybe it's best to kind of table that till next budget year.
Next fiscal year, yeah, I
Okay.
think so. Because we probably will use up the vast majority of our money. Tish said, oh, we can usually count on you having some money that we can tap. And I said, not this year.
I'm not sure what they do with our leftovers. There's usually very much to start with, but
Yeah, right. Well, they have tapped our budget in some years there have been a few years when we have spent very little, but not that many, so.
okay. Town development, planning and zoning has an upcoming public hearing on June 21st. It's regarding a zone change and concept plan application for a warehouse to be sited off of River Road, 2 large parcels that combine to be about 158 acres. So as we discussed last meeting, I started working on a draft of a letter that we can submit to planning and zoning for the public hearing. And I sent that out to everybody to give you a chance to read it ahead of time. Some of you provided a few comments back to me, as well as Marilyn and Jackie and Nora provided some comments back. So does anybody have anything they'd like to say tonight about this? Any changes you want to see or?
Your letter said it all. Yeah, that was a great letter. Yeah, I didn't realize
that's
the
it.
extent of it.
Yeah, another Kathy Demers tour de force to save the Wellington environment here. A lot of stuff in there, Kathy.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You did a
You know,
lot of
I'm-
work on that, obviously.
Kathy, do we know if Deep is planning to comment? Because it wouldn't hurt. I'd be happy to just give a call and say who would deal with this kind of issue and find out whether they are planning to speak to any issues with the adjacent state property, because.
It's too early in the process,
Oh,
I
okay.
think.
Would they have been notified, Bob, as an abutting landowner?
Yes,
Okay.
letters were sent.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, this letter was based on going through the plan of conservation and development and looking at the natural resource maps that are in that plan, as well as some of the town's GIS data. And also kind of just reviewing some of our maps that we had made up from the natural resource inventory, which is a kind of an aside note. I'd like to suggest at some point, maybe later in the year, we start to think about maybe updating our natural resource inventory, because the last time we did that was 2007. So it might be nice to work on that going forward. But there were.
The natural resource inventory, is that the property that we have, the town of Wellington, or just, what is that?
Oh, okay, good question. So back in 2007, the commission looked at all the natural resources in town, and we wrote up some text about them and the importance of some of these resources, as well as came up with separate maps related to those natural resources. For example, we had, like a map of water courses, a map of wetlands and steep slopes, a map that contained the open space in town, forest land,
Historical resources, historical property.
yeah.
Okay.
And that is available on our website. If you go to the Wellington Conservation Commission's webpage, there's a drop-down menu on the left-hand side. If you click on natural resource inventory, it will have some of the text. It will have the text, but it also provides the maps. We had, I think, I'm trying to remember, 18 maps. Was it 1 through 9?
15, maybe 15
Yeah,
or
so I
16.
think it's 15 something, 15 or 16, I can't remember.
Anyway, yeah.
Got copies anyway. And actually, if we were meeting in the in the town office building, you would see a number of them posted on the walls of the meeting room.
Yeah.
Because they are a good resource for the town, for PZC as well as Conservation Commission. And that natural resource inventory was incorporated into the town's plan of conservation and development.
The 2018 POCD. So they basically said they would incorporate that into it. I did personally have a couple of things that I wanted to suggest changing to this document. It's not going to be any longer, so that's probably good news for all of you here. But there's just a few typos and maybe some grammatical things that I can change, and I can send it around. Things like, instead of on page 1, instead of since, put because zone changes. I know that if Carol had a chance to go through this, she would have had some additional suggestions, so I'll give her some time to do
Really?
that.
At this point.
So
Well, it's not going to be for a few days. So.
that's okay. I mean, as long as you can get it to me by Monday, I can incorporate it. And my plan is
maybe so, maybe I'll try. It's
okay. All right. Well, if
been a little hectic lately.
yeah, I mean, they're not big issues, but I did go through it myself.
I will. We were away. But we had a very busy week last week, and then we were away from Monday till today. So
5 o'clock
Family.
today.
It's busy for everybody for sure.
yeah.
But I did want to say on page 2, I did change something that was written there under, I don't know if you all have it in front of you, but review of map 4-1 hydrological soil conditions, where it says hydrological restricted soils. I said 20% of the property proposed for development contains restricted or very restricted soils. I added that the remainder is well draining soils. And the reason I did that is because there's 2 sides to this. If you have restrictive soils and you're concerned about siting a wastewater treatment plant or a septic system, you'd be concerned that they wouldn't perk. But the other side of this is that currently this property exists as a forest, and well draining soils mean that water can drain down to the groundwater easily. This proposed development will have 48% impervious surface. So some of those soils will no longer be useful in that way. And so it's just to make a point that there could be some changes in the hydrology of this property because of the impervious surfaces. And that's what I'm going to be saying basically in that section. Does anybody have any concerns about that or questions?
I have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
We don't know if they're going to be using porous asphalt as a surface medium.
That's very true. That's true. So there's a potential, I think the wording I tried to use throughout this document is potential, possibly, likely. It wasn't, we don't know exactly what their design will be, the 100% design, until they come back for a special permit.
That's right.
So obviously, these are all statements that can be put in context of what the future design will be, and maybe just give some other thoughts for when they do come back. It gives the applicant also an opportunity to consider how this might be viewed when they do come back for special permit with their, their 100% complete design. I mean, this isn't, we're not trying to stop development. We're trying to make sure that there's a balance between conservation and development, and that natural resources are protected. And any information we can share upfront with the applicant could be a positive thing for them too, because when they come back with their design, they may have been able to consider some of that ahead of time and not, have to have somebody say something, you get clobbered, so to speak, with comments when they come back. So
Bob, I was curious as to why you're saying that it's too early for Deep to comment, particularly since the zone change is being tied to a potential specific project, which and that proposed project would have very different effects from what other forms of development might have.
Well, this is basically the first step in their process. And this is just a preliminary design. So if anybody from, the state was going to look at it, they really haven't got all the facts yet.
Yeah.
Because this is just a very preliminary thing to show us, to show the town, to show PZC what their proposal is, the scope and the position of the proposed development. It has nothing to do with any specifics at this time.
Mhm. But the potential, they leave in the preliminaries would give some indication of how those, particularly if they're talking about placement of the project within the property, how that might potentially affect the state forest.
I'm not going to get into that with you in the middle of
No.
this with you, Carol.
Well, okay, no, I'm just asking, Bob, because Kathy is presenting something from us based on the preliminary project, and
Right.
yeah, it was just a question about timing.
And I'm sure if Deep has any questions, they're going to be asking questions of the developer as well.
I would just say from a natural resource perspective, if Deep wanted just to have general comments about any potential zone change from residential to a different zone, they certainly could comment to those effects, and they could note.
Absolutely.
They could note any
Absolutely.
natural resources that are in the area or on the property, if they wanted to do that, I suppose. And
That's what
Yeah.
the public forum is all about.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you're saying in essence, it would be, this is focusing more on the zone change. So that would be an opportunity for Deep to express concerns about impact on the state forest generally for a change of usage, regardless of what the particular project is. That I'm just asking for clarification.
I'm not going to comment because of my position with the PZC.
Okay.
I'm willing to listen and take people's concerns since I represent the people of the town, but I'm not going to get into a back and forth discussion of what I might think, because I, like you, going to the public hearing to bring myself up to speed of what their proposal is, and that's what I have to keep in mind.
Yeah, I understand it's because you're wearing two hats and that's difficult.
Just going through the document a little further, I wanted to note that on page 6, under where it says chapter 6, maintain and enhance community character. One of the things that I did go back to do is I looked at the maps in that section. There is one map, map 6-1, that's called historic resources. And it does show that portions of the property may contain archaeological sensitive areas. So those are blob maps, just like the natural diversity database blobs. So if there was in the past something that was noted to be an archaeologic artifact in one of those areas, they would kind of create a blob in that general area to show that there had been some findings in those areas. So it doesn't pinpoint the area, but some of those blob areas do come on to the property, the proposed property. So I just made note of that. in that section. And then one of the recommendations that I added was that the Planning and Zoning Commission could recommend an archaeological screening review by the state archaeologist. My understanding is that at this point, with a zoning application review, planning and zoning members have a little more discretion about what they can ask for and require, what information they can require from the applicant to help them make a decision on the zone change. So these are just recommendations that we can offer to them. What they do is totally up to them, but it doesn't hurt to offer that. And the other thing I added as a recommendation in that section was because we do note there's going to be some changes in that ridge line because of having to put a building there and take some of the top of that hill off based on the grade changes that they show on their plans. There could potentially be an impact to the view shed. So when you're looking at that hilltop from different points in town, that hilltop may look different. Obviously, there will be a building on it, but it's going to change that. And so one of the other recommendations I made was that planning and zoning could request a view shed impact analysis.
Okay, Kathy, you have a copy of your letter with that information added to it?
Yes. Oh, I would not send anything out until I run all this by you.
Yeah, so do you have a revised page 6?
I do. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I'm going to send you the revised document in whole. I'll send that out to you after we end this meeting. If you want, I can do that. And you can look at it and make comments and send them back to me before anything goes out.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yep. And the other thing I just added to that section is where we were talking about proposed landscaping on the west side is tall enough to reduce excuse me, let me back up there. If you go to page 6 in the middle where it says parking up to 143 trailers is proposed for the west side of the property and for up to 259 trailers on the north side of the property. The potential location of an advanced wastewater treatment building that could be up to 45 feet tall is also noted in this area. Because and the wording I used was because the slope grades downward, I changed that to because the grade slopes downward from these parking areas. These vehicles, wastewater treatment building, and 65-foot tall warehouse will be highly visible to the public, particularly from a distance. If you've ever been driving down I-84 and looking at that hillside as you're getting off at the mobile station, I mean, you can see the hilltop, and you can see it from some aspect of coming from the north on Route 32. What I had written there, though, is that at the bottom, the proposed landscaping on the west side, it will take some time before the proposed landscaping on the west side is tall enough to reduce the visibility of those structures from Route 32 below. And when I was driving there on my way to Vermont, actually along 32, with the foliage that's there now on the side of Route 32, you really can't see from 32 looking upward, and you wouldn't see the building or the tractor trailer vehicles that are parked in front of it from that level. You'd have to be way further north on 32 or up on 84. So I changed that. And I did question whether or not it might be possible that it could be visible from the town's athletic complex, the River Road Athletic Complex, and Village Hill. Just questioned it because we don't know obviously how that might impact those view sheds. So again, that was why the recommendation might be to invite them to do a view shed analysis. So.
There would be seasonal differences in that too.
Yes, yeah. Okay, and I mean, those were the major things. Other things were just really just changes maybe in a word just to make it sound a little less subjective. You know, instead of saying, for example, it is highly likely, I just put it is likely. And then on the last page, under some of the last recommendations that we make, number 3, request an environmental review and impact statement be prepared by professionals qualified to prepare such studies. I wrote Connecticut's environmental review team, ERT, has been available to do this in the past. I just decided maybe we should just take that out. We're just going to say, you know, an environmental review. It doesn't, we don't have to qualify who that should be by. So any other questions or concerns or comments at this point? Like I said, feel free to get back to me when I send around the revised edition.
Nice job, Kathy.
Yeah. I would just make one comment, Kathy, that the developer is aware of the archaeological and the biological sensitivity in that area.
Okay, how do we know?
They're taking that into consideration. Trust me on that.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't doubt what you're saying at all, Bob. It's just not been part of the public record to this point. And they maybe they will state that during the public hearing. I hope they do, you know. We're just raising this based on what they provided, the applicants provided, and is visible to the public in the file.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And I really don't know, but with your being on both conservation and PZC, that it's difficult. I don't know. I thought that I'm not sure. I guess the biggest hat is the PZC hat.
Yeah.
The PZC is going to deal with facts, Carol, and that's how we're going to make our decision.
I understand that, Bob. I really do. But
I'm just stating that for
yeah,
what
and
it's
I'm
worth.
just in the context of recommendation coming from us. Just raising that. I'm not. It's not. Don't take it personally. I'm just.
I can't.
No, I know. No, I don't expect you to. That's what I'm saying, Bob. I don't expect you to take it personally. I know you're going to be weighing things on the facts. But
I have an awful lot of questions myself with a project of this scale. And I've been doing my research since I got my folder, and that was probably a week before Kathy got hers. And there's a lot to be considered, and there's a lot to be considered which might not be on everyone's mind, but could impact the town in 5 or 10 years if it's not addressed. So it's something to be deliberated and looked at very carefully.
Trust that, you know, you and all the members of the commission will do that. You know, this is obviously one of the largest possible developments that's come to, you know, to be at an application stage for this town. So, you know, we know that's going to be, we know that you guys are going to do your due diligence to review this. So thank you.
Well, and one of the things that I would just bring to this group, and what's being worked on is a public forum where EDC will be involved with the developer and possibly taking questions, not possibly, taking questions and concerns from the public. And this was brought about in large part from public comment that I received and was received from the at the planning office. I felt that people were missing the boat insofar as in some of the crazy comments that are posted online. I mean, it goes from serious to absurd, to be honest with you. And an awful lot of people are saying, well, how could PZC let this happen? Well, I think things needed to be brought into line, and that's why they're working on this with the developer. Over the years, people have been concerned about taxes. 3 years ago, EDC was able to get a grant. They started getting professional help. So they were functioning on a regular basis. And they went out and started soliciting to help mediate property taxes. So there's a lot to be considered, and the developer wants to hear from the public.
Just for clarification, by EDC, you're talking about the Economic Development Commission.
That's who EDC is. Yes, Carol.
Yeah, just make sure that everybody knows who you're talking about.
So, after a few conversations with Mike and Chris, this is what's coming down the road. And hopefully it'll come together. It'll include the selectmen, EDC, and the developer. And of course, the most important part are the townspeople. But I think with an awful lot of comments that are being made, their EDC is not being thought of as a participant in this process, but they certainly are, and they're probably the driving force for projects of this size.
Thanks for sharing that, Bob. And, obviously, I don't look at Facebook. I don't know anything about what's actually being said, but as we know, when people don't have a lot of information about something, a lot of times people start to worry about the worst things, or, things get spread that shouldn't ever get, mentioned. So, hopefully that process of having the EDC maybe do some public meetings and through the public hearing, gives people an opportunity to ask questions and to listen to what the developer has to say about, what they're potentially proposing. So that's a good thing for the town.
What is the date of the PCC hearing again? Time and date?
The 21st, Carol.
Yeah, 21st at
7:30.
7:30. Okay,
That's
thanks.
That's an electronic meeting. It's not in person.
Okay, thanks.
So if nobody has any other, well, again, does anybody have any questions or comments? I don't want to. Okay.
No.
If not, do you feel that you want to put this to a vote in terms of authorizing me to submit a letter to Planning and Zoning regarding our comments? You feel that's necessary, or how do you want to handle that?
I'll abstain.
Well, let's take a vote.
Okay.
I make a motion that the commission send Kathy's letter.
Kathy's letter?
Yeah.
That Kathy be authorized to send a letter on behalf of the commission to the PZC, something like that.
Right. To send a letter. I'm just writing this down. It probably sounds a little bit better. It shouldn't be my letter. I did craft. I did craft it. You guys did review it, hopefully.
I know.
So okay.
That was just the general gist of the motion.
I get it. Okay. Okay.
Very generous, Peter.
So, Carol, that was a friendly amendment. Would you mind just stating it again, and then
that Kathy that the chair be authorized to send a letter on behalf of the Conservation Commission. But actually, Pete's the one who's making the motion.
That's true. You offered a friendly motion.
I don't know. Up to you, Pete. You take it from the top.
Well, did-
My brain is not functioning at its best.
Did you have a,
Couple of very busy days.
did you have a title on this document?
It's a letter to planning and zoning regarding a zone change in concept plan application per section 12.15.4, which I can add to the motion. Send a letter on behalf of the Conservation Commission to PZC regarding that zone change.
Sure, I guess just that. We don't have to specify whether they're suggestions or concerns, I guess, just it's about that, regarding that hearing, that's a.
Okay. All right. So I have it as the chair be authorized to send a letter on behalf of the Conservation Commission to Planning and Zoning Commission regarding PZ-22-10 zone change and concept plan application. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any, you abstained, Bob? I have that in the.
Right, yeah.
Okay, yep, okay, Carol. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
I,
Opposed? Abstained?
Aye.
So moved. Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay, collaborating organizations. I
Oh,
don't
not
have,
yet, not yet.
oh, no,
There's more
town
coming.
develop, oh, okay, go ahead, Bob.
So at our last PZC meeting, on the call with us was a gentleman representing a company that is considering coming to Willington with an adult marijuana storefront. So stay tuned for that.
Do you want to make a note, Bob, about the zone text amendments regarding cannabis establishments? Is that what we're related? This is all related to, right?
Well, it doesn't have anything to do with the amendments and such that were made. This is just someone that's expressed interest in coming to Willington. And again, they're going to be looking at the regulations that have been amended. Well, we'll vote on everything this coming time. Well, I guess I can't really recall exactly what happened at the last meeting. I'd have to go back and look. There were changes insofar as distances and such. And they're, they have to come into compliance with those regulations. I'm just stating the fact that there's someone that is interested, and it's another, again, EDC has been pushing for different businesses, and people, there's been quite a bit of interest in Willington for varying types of businesses, and this happens to be one of them. So
Wellington, where the grass is greener.
yeah, it's kind of brown when it's dry, Peter.
Well, as I understand it, as part of the state's statutes allowing for individual use of cannabis products, they're also allowing for cannabis establishments, which include retail, but also growers, to be licensed in the state of Connecticut. And then each town has to decide within its zoning regulations how to review, basically how to review any person that wants to come in and establish some type of business related to cannabis. And so
Right, this is going to be strictly a retail operation.
I understand, Bob, but I'm saying is currently planning and zoning, when I attended that meeting, is in the midst of coming up with regulations regarding all types of cannabis establishments. And the gentleman who did speak did describe a retail operation that he and his family would like to establish and would like to site it in Willington. Is that
Yeah,
correct? That was your
that's
understanding?
correct.
Yeah. But it's part of a larger process that planning and zoning is looking at right now in terms of
Yes.
amending its regulations to be able to accommodate businesses that do sell or grow or even produce foods that are made from marijuana. So whatever the state is allowing, they'd need a license first, just like a liquor store would need a license. And we have zoning regulations regarding alcohol in town. So this is to kind of establish it for cannabis.
That's correct.
So,
And a lot of it, we had a moratorium on cannabis businesses just so that no one could come in early when we were thinking about this. We wanted to wait until the state came out with some basic regs and then use those as a basis for our decision. And, I think there's still some discussion to be had about if someone wanted to come in and do a large grow operation. With the modern horticultural techniques that are used, I don't see it as using a huge amount of water since most everything is on a drip irrigation. It's either liquid fertilized or there's fertilizer perels that are added to the soil or top dressed on the soil. And I mentioned this to Mike, the thing that should be a concern and probably won't be, if someone with a background wouldn't bring it up, is you probably don't want those people composting that spent soil on site, just because there's those perels, soil fertilizer perels continue to leach fertilizer for a certain amount of time. And you need to have that material used, and some grow operations make that soil available to gardeners, which it's a really nice product. So it's again, it's something, it's those real fine details, but with the large growing operation, there's so much money that is needed. It's mind-boggling how many millions of dollars it takes to get into the grow operation. So you might find a few people looking to do a small scale operation, but it's it's always a possibility. But you're talking about a Butler type building that's, probably 30,000 square feet or something like that. So there's plus all the items that go into that to make the growing of plants possible in a big dark building. So anyway, I don't want to drag this on.
No, but I guess it's in terms of the Conservation Commission, some of the variables that are kind of applicable for that kind of an issue. Obviously, the retail end of it wouldn't affect our concerns as a commission, but potential growers, depending on how much water they could potentially use. The grow operations, like you said, if they're in a dark building, they're going to have it environmentally controlled and light and so on. So it could be energy intensive, but again, that's not what our commission is responsible for. We're not like sustainable energy in town.
Oh, right.
some
Right.
towns have that type of commission, but it's
Yeah, well,
interesting.
but again, that's the other hat that I'm wearing at this particular point in time. Uh, and you know, I happened to walk in on the pre-app meeting for this grower the other day, or this marijuana store, and
Bob,
I had
we're being recorded, so I don't know if there's anything.
no, that's fine as long as
Okay. Mhm.
it's not a problem.
Okay.
So you know, they're willing to learn also.
Mhm.
So it's an ongoing, you know, situation, and we'll see how it turns out.
Yeah. Well, thanks for updating us on that. Anything else that anybody's aware of from inland wetlands or ZBA? I know that inland wetlands has not been meeting very regularly. I don't know if it's because there's just nothing on their agenda, or the fact that they only have 3 regular members right now and no alternates, which could be, you know, difficult to get a quorum at times. So, but moving on, collaborative organizations, I don't have anything really to report. Does anybody know of anything going on with any of the organizations that we usually partner with? JT, anything like that, Pete?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. Pollinator Pathway initiatives. As you guys are aware, the Girl Scouts, you know, installed the pollinator garden. They have been taking turns going out and watering it. They are interested in having some space on our CC webpage to put some information about pollinator pathways and gardens, and that the public could connect to. And maybe they'd even attach some external links so that if people wanted more information about pollinator pathways, they could click on a link from our website. And I'm working with Tish, who's the webmaster, to look at how we could do that. It doesn't seem very complicated, and the girls are willing to write all the text, provide pictures, and so on. It would just be a matter of us providing that to Tish so she could upload them. Does anybody have any concerns about us doing that on our website?
I think it's a great idea.
I think it is.
Sounds
too.
good.
Okay, good. The second issue on that is Connie Bedan sent me a picture of the pollinator garden they installed at Hull School, and I sent it on to you, and it shows they had a rock painting party, and they put the rocks around the edges of the pollinator garden. And they really were very excited to do that. It was something that the kids participated in at the school. And Connie asked me to ask the commission if the Girl Scouts could potentially do the same thing, put painted rocks around the edges of the pollinator garden at Fenton Ruby Park. So I wanted to, what she described as maybe having a day when they would invite the public to come to Fenton Ruby. They would set up tables, they would have the paints and so on, and the rocks, and people could paint them and then put them around the garden. So I wanted to throw that out to you as you see what the commission thought about it.
My personal preference, I think, would be probably not just because it's a park and we like, I prefer to see it kept in a natural state rather than have the painted rocks. That's my own personal preference. And I appreciate what they're doing, but I think in the school settings are very different from having the garden in the natural environment of the park.
I agree.
Don't like to rain on their parade, but I think it's an entirely different setting for this garden as opposed to getting kids excited about it in the context of the school gardens. That's my preference.
Bob, Pete, do you want to weigh in on that?
I think
Is that
it was,
Bob or Pete?
That wasn't me.
I'll speak for him. I think it's at the park. It probably is a good thing to have the plants in more of a natural setting. You know, I can understand the girls' enthusiasm about this, but I think if they've put in a couple gardens at the schools, that gave them enough adrenaline to hold them for a while.
Peter, you have
Yeah,
some thoughts?
I agree. Let's keep it natural. I was thinking about this a little bit, and my first reaction is what the others have been saying here. Yeah, well, it's a park and keep it natural. And I was almost thinking, well, now let them have their fun right there in the picnic area where people are there for fun and games right in the picnic area anyway. But maybe it should be left naturally there. And I guess, if we had a whole bunch of people out there painting rocks, the question is whether I would wonder whether any of those would start straying further than the pollinator garden out on the trails or somewhere down the road or something like that. And that we definitely don't want.
If they wanted to have an event where at the park to publicize the pollinator gardens and the whole idea of the pollinator pathway and that kind of thing, and have an event where they had activities, fine. But I'm not sure we want permanently painted rocks in the park as set a precedent in that.
Hi, Jackie. We're at the point in our agenda where we're talking about the pollinator pathway. How are you?
Good. Sorry I'm late. I got carried away in the field.
That's okay.
That time of year.
Did you get a chance to see the picture of the rocks around the pollinator garden? And we're just talking about whether or not something we would want at the Benton Ruby Park. Do you have some thoughts? Everybody else is kind of weighed in.
And everybody else said,
Oh, okay.
just to let you know.
I didn't really see it being an issue, but a lot of people have been painting rocks and leaving them around hiking spots anyways. It's I don't know why, but it seems like it's kind of a movement or something where you leave a rock, take a rock or something like that.
Yeah.
So I kind of figured that was already happening. So I don't know if it's going to encourage people more to paint more rocks and leave them.
Well, yeah, that's what I was saying too. We
If it
don't
was a
want
border, I think that's, kind of obvious enough as a permanent installation that it wouldn't.
Well, the prior discussion was just that in the park environment is different from the school setting where they were trying to get kids involved and enthusiastic about the pollinator gardens. And so they have the gardens in 2 other settings where they can do that. And we might prefer to keep a more natural environment for the garden in the park. That just to fill you in a bit on what our prior discussion was.
The other thing that I was thinking too is that it would be very difficult for the landscaper that comes to cut the grass to kind of go around those rocks. I don't know if they come out with a string trimmer, but you'd need to do that. Otherwise the grass is going to start to really grow, where they might be able to get the edge of the mower just along the mulch,
Yeah, if they were able to put the rocks on top of the heavy mulch, then it'd be good for a while at least. But it's difficult to keep.
And there is a fairly narrow pathway at one end of the garden for the mower to navigate as well. So that can just complicate things a bit. It wouldn't be. I want to bring up the parade, but
well, from what I hear everybody saying, and Nora had weighed in too before when she sent me a note. She said the same thing. She feels that it should be left as kind of more of a natural environment, the park setting. And I think we're all saying the same thing. And I can get back to Connie and tell her that, we would understand why they would want to get the public involved. And if they want to do some other type of public event at the park, that we would welcome that. But as far as leaving the rocks there, it's something that we don't think it's keeping with the natural setting of the park. That sound okay?
Yes.
sounds fine to me.
Okay.
They could maybe buy buy some bees and have the public come and take home a bee to their own garden.
Well, yeah, I mean, there might be other things they can do. Host a talk at the garden, where people could come out and listen to somebody speak about pollinator plants, or sell small little plants or something. It might be a little late in the season, but
Yeah, or just have games, or there are things that they could do to enhance their project that
Yeah.
wouldn't necessarily involve permanent changes to the garden that's been planted there.
okay, all right. Well, thanks. I'll pass that on to Connie. The girls are planning to put up a display on the back side of the kiosk as well. They're working on that, so it'll be an informational display that they can put there. Okay. Let's see. Well, one other thing that came to my mind when I spoke about Nora, she did tell me that when she was out at the park, because she's filling the trail guide boxes and taking down the comments from the register. And she said on the register, one day she read that somebody said they wanted to have I'm going to read this from my notes here. They made a comment that the Taylor Pond Bridge should be repaired and accessible. So she wasn't sure what the person meant by that comment, but she said the next day she was out at the park and this woman came up to her and said that she had written that comment in there, and she was concerned because she comes out to the park with a double wide stroller and she can't get across the bridge, and she has trouble on the trails, and she thinks that we should do something about that. So I just wanted to throw that out there to you. So
The bridge itself, I would have thought somebody would have raised a question about the roots, getting through those, but
Yeah,
I don't think there's much we can do about the present trail to accommodate, strollers. I mean, if people want to go out there, don't see a problem with it, but I don't see what we can do to make it much better. Especially there's lots of raised walkways and things too. So
An option might be in the future to create a shorter accessible trail, maybe something to do with one of the hay fields, like have a perimeter mode around one of the hay fields, which would actually be kind of helpful to keep back the invasive plants and things along the edge, keep it from approaching.
Yeah.
And that would be an easy place to make it flat enough to make an accessible trail.
It's sort of like Hipskies do around some of their hay fields right around their house.
Yeah.
yeah. The thing is with, as you guys, I mean, I'm just going to throw this out. My concern would be how often will we have to mow this trail, and who's going to mow this trail regularly to keep the grass from growing enough so people could walk on it, or take a stroller.
right. And then you have to have a surface. If it's an issue is pushing a stroller on a surface, just cutting the grass down is not going to give you a surface that's easy to push a double wide stroller on. So it could, I think it's something that would require a lot more thought.
But it's a good suggestion, Jackie, to
think about having an accessible trail would be nice, but I think it's more than,
I mean, we are lucky in town that we do have the athletic park, or the rec park. Now, I don't know if they allow strollers on that surface, that walking surface. Does anybody know?
can't imagine them prohibiting it.
Right.
I
don't know if
I'll be right back.
Yeah, I don't know if you have like, let's say you were walking on the track with a small child who had a small bicycle. I'll have to find out from the rec people and see if they allow things like that on that surface, or if it's just you can only walk on it. Because certainly, if the woman wasn't, for example, if somebody else said something like that, they want a place to walk with their stroller, and they didn't know about that, that is something we could suggest to them.
But if you had a double wide stroller, maybe they could walk from the road into the bridge. But once you get beyond that, then the trail itself it would be very difficult to make that accessible.
Right.
Well, we do have, the road does, extend all the way up, a fair amount up to where the Ruby Trail shoots off. And I mean, that's, up and back. I mean, that's kind of a good sturdy surface for a double stroller to, roll on.
Yeah, that's true. Hmm. Okay.
Either that, or I might suggest a double backpack.
Yeah, there is
I used
that.
I used to carry our daughter around in a backpack all the time.
Yep.
Maybe
I
maybe a
did
double
too, one in the front and one in the back.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
You go, girl.
Yep.
Well,
Lots.
I don't know if this person's aware of the, what is it, Merrow Meadow there in Mansfield down by the
Yeah.
Willimantic River. That's a paved, that's a
Yeah,
wide,
that's a great place.
wide
That's a great
paved
place
path
to go.
there, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Good
And,
platforms, I think that you can roll up onto also on a
Yeah, it's
couple
all
of
wooden,
sections
yeah.
anyway.
Okay. Hmm. Well, I'll pass that on to Nora in case she meets up with that person again. That, we did talk about it and, had some possible suggestions. We're just not in a position at this point to do anything about the Taylor Pond Trail. So, going on, ARPA requests. The only thing I have to report is that there was a public hearing on 5/24, and the ARPA Commission basically at that time heard public comment regarding a set of all of the different ARPA requests that had already been kind of approved to be moved to public hearing. And our $2,800 request for a forestry plan and the $3,500 request for building materials for the park had already been moved to that public hearing. And at that public hearing, we had a few people just speak in support of both of those, our plans. And the ARPA Commission gave final approval to basically allow us to use that money. So as soon as we want to start buying building materials from that fund to use for the park and other trails, we can do that. I'm not sure of exactly how we will work that out. Carol, when you have time, maybe you can talk to the finance department and just find out, once money has been approved from ARPA, how the commission would go about tapping into it.
Yeah, and I think since we plan on closing on the Talmadge property, part of that is that the management plan for Knowlton and Talmadge runs through 2022, and we have a quote which was the 2,800 was based on, which would include a plan for the newly acquired piece of Talmadge, as well as updating the plan for the existing properties. So we might want to move on that fairly soon. My understanding from what was said at the hearing is that the monies that were awarded for these two projects, which are quite small in comparison to some of the other requests, is that there are funds in hand already which we could draw on, whereas some of the others will depend on future receipts from the federal government. Is that correct? Your understanding as well?
Yes, that was my understanding. I just didn't know what process now we as a commission would go, what we would do. Do we have to contact the finance office to set up, what we plan to do with those funds? Obviously, the ones for the park for building materials, we're not going to be using those all in 1 year. That could extend over 1, 2, 3 years.
And I think we were presenting that in terms of longer term
yes.
that needs to make repairs over time. And so perhaps we wouldn't necessarily want to draw on that right away, nor do we want to stop using some of our operating budget money for trail repairs, because once ARPA runs out, then what do we do? So that's something to look at too.
But I do believe we have to expend all of those funds within the next 4 years, I think.
Yeah.
The town has to expend them.
Yeah,
So
I won't promise to do it immediately, but I can talk with Donna just to find out how to handle
And then the forestry plan, as you said, once we close on the Talmadge, then we're in a position to let Conwood know that we want them to move forward on their, they had basically given us this quote, and they would be ready to move to look at all of the properties. So the existing Talmadge, the new Talmadge, and the Milton, they would do the forest management plan for. So
Now, would it be in order for us to go ahead and make a motion to authorize contracting with Conwood for an updated plan for Knowlton and Talmadge to include the newly acquired property?
I would
Or
like
do
to
you want
suggest that we wait till we close on the property.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I think we do want to take action to authorize the town to enter into a contract with Conwood for that purpose, but it doesn't have to be done in this fiscal year, so it's not a, because something, but I think it's something we should do. I had under other, I had one other thought, but we can move when we get to other.
Anything else about ARPA? Anybody have questions? Okay, we can move on to other. Go ahead, Carol.
Well, my thought was that since when we presented our proposal to the Board of Finance for the purchase of the, well, actually it was to the Capital Improvement Committee, the CIP committee, we presented to them that the maximum state grant that we would expect to receive would be $62,500. Because that's the highest percentage we had received in the past, and that in the prior year, most of the grants that were awarded were a lower percentage. And since the amount that that looks like we're going to be receiving is some $18,750 more than that figure, then perhaps when those funds come in, they could be prorated between the portion of the purchase price that was coming from the reserve fund and the portion of the purchase price that was coming from the open space fund. Just throwing out the idea of having some proration so that some of the money, when it comes in, would go into the open space fund and not all of that to the reserve fund. Just, it seemed like a reasonable suggestion to me, because it was roughly the purchase price was 125 and 101 was coming from the town, and 24,000 of that purchase price, or approximately 20%, was to come from the open space fund. So it would seem reasonable to me to suggest a proration of those monies when the time comes, which won't be till all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, but just something to think about.
Going back to that idea, I guess, Carol, one of the things I'd be inclined to try first would be to ask that any additional money beyond what was anticipated to go back to the reserve fund, which was 62.5, that anything above beyond that should go back into the open space fund rather than proration. That would be my
But just some, just to some clarification, some way of indicating that because there was a the town wasn't to bear the full cost, and what we're receiving is substantially in excess of what we had promised them. As a matter of fact, we've been fairly pessimistic about what percentage we might receive from the state based on the prior year's experience. So I'm just something to think about, and there's no hurry on it because we won't be getting the money immediately, not till everything's lined up. But anyway.
Anything else? Any other? Okay, great. Communication, I have nothing to report. And under new business, the other thing I wanted just to bring up is maybe planning something this fall that would involve our trail stewards again and a Friends of the Park work day. If you have some ideas about some things that we can tackle in the park, we certainly could put them on the list to do. It's never too early to start thinking about, something going on in maybe October. So I know that the Taylor, it's the Taylor homestead by the Ruby Trail, right? That area there is really overrun again. And, you know, it's, a lot of it's invasives, but just if we could kind of cut things back and try to keep that as open as possible, especially with the foundations there, that might be something that we could do as a group.
I haven't been out there in a while. Is there anything going on that's impacting the foundation and
Not really. I mean, there's not a lot of saplings or anything growing up in the middle of it, but it's just that, you know, some of the invasives are so tall now you can't see anything.
then I guess maybe we should think about doing something about that.
And I was wondering about the field behind Michael Bolstridge's bench. I hadn't walked that piece, that little bit of Taylor Pond between Green Trail, Julia's. That's really overgrown. I was surprised. Is that what we were going to get a brush cutter for? Or?
That was part of it. And then, as you know, when we did the Friends of the Park workday in May, we ended up doing the first field, which is larger.
Right.
Yeah.
And we didn't get to the second one.
Yeah, we basically did most of that by hand. Chris, we had one of the volunteers, and then Chris went back later with the brush cutter, the handheld brush cutter, and went in there and took down a lot of the saplings. But a lot of people were doing it with clippers. So that's another area, Patty, good point, we could do in the fall, is tackle that field.
Because they're thick. There's some, it's not a easy loper cut. I don't think.
Okay, good point. Yeah, I mean, our trail stewards are basically being asked to just cut back, you know, some of the brush along the trail. But if we have some large areas, that would be something we could do as a group.
Yeah, one time that Taylor Homestead site was cleaned up nicely, and the town garden committee had planted daffodils along the wall and the entrance to get into it there, and there was a memorial bench there that was established, which has since fallen all apart and disintegrated.
Yeah.
Which one was that? What bench was that?
I don't know, somebody put a bench there.
Do we remember know who? Or was that one of those benches that appeared that just dropped from the sky?
No, that was authorized. I'm not sure whether Garden Club did that or they, you know, had someone did that. It was all it was a nice cedar bench, I guess, and it was bolted to the, you know, they put footings in the ground and anchored it to the concrete footings. And
is it still there?
No, it rotted away.
Rotted away?
Yeah, it fell down. And,
that's too bad.
Well, there's a number of trees that fell down, or large branches had fallen down around that foundation the last couple of years. And probably get in there and, you know, cut those out of the way, and, you know, at least cut them down to the ground so they could start rotting. And I would think we'd want to take and get, you know, a 3 or 4 foot buffer around that foundation, so somebody doesn't, you know, not understand that the foundation's there and somebody fall in.
Yeah.
Point. Yep. All right.
Someone I was walking with mentioned that all of a sudden you come upon it, you don't realize until you're
Right.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, that's the safety concern is really important. Yeah.
So that's a potential area then for us to work on this fall. And if somebody wants to try to tackle it before then, have at it. You know, I can help organize some of the Friends of the Park people, but unfortunately, I don't think I can commit to physically helping out this summer. So. Okay, I think that's it, unless anybody has anything else they'd like to share or.
I have a question for Kathy, but I'll talk to you later about the invoice.
Okay.
Financial fine point that I'll talk to you about. Doesn't require action by the commission.
Okay, so we'll consider our next meeting's July 20th. If for some reason we don't have really anything that we need to discuss, we can, certainly contemplate canceling that meeting, but I'll let you know in advance, or I'll question you in advance if you want to meet, if there's not much going on. So
Kathy, what's the date that we're still, under current legislation, what's the end date when we can still have remote meetings?
I'm not sure, Carol. I don't think that it's anytime soon.
I don't think, I just can't recall. I'll think of it.
Yeah, I don't know exactly if there's an end date that they've actually established. It's not this year that I know of, so.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
It was done by legislative action. I just can't recall what the end.
Yeah, Robin could tell us. I know that
Yeah.
she had sent the statute around, but I don't recall the date when they'd have to re-examine it,
Yeah.
when it would expire.
Yeah, but I think it runs through the summer at least, so that wouldn't be an issue if we have to meet.
So we'll continue meeting virtually then until further notice. So, all right. So I'm going to call, see if somebody wants to make a motion to close this meeting.
So move.
Okay. Second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, anyone want to stay around for longer?
Not me.
Okay. No moved. All right, everybody. Thank you.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Okay.
Bye.
Nighty night.
All right. Sleep tight.